That's what this song is about. Thank you. Such a thing, as a matter of fact, as that song I told you could never happen to me or anyone I know.
Well, hello, I'm Jim Drive and welcome to the video. Today I'm going to do a sideways curve, which isn't always easy at my age.
Was that a joke?
This video is about bands and solo artists who didn't just miss fame, they actively confused it, frightened it, or made fame feel deeply uncomfortable. No bad music or bad ideas, not failures in the spiritual or artistic sense, just acts who were simply too weird to be famous. I'm not talking about novelty acts or deliberate outsiders pretending to be something that they were not. No, these were serious artists with ideas, talent, and conviction. Unfortunately, the broken music industry of the time had no idea what to do with them. So let's get started. Let's start with something genuinely strange. The Lemon Kittens were formed in Reading in 1977 by Carl Blake and Gary Thatcher. They went through several lineup changes before morphing into a duo consisting of Blake and Daniel Dax, with the addition of other musicians for their very occasional live performances. Their sound sat somewhere between post-punk, industrial noise, fractured funk and outright experimental music.
And we take time to dance.
They released records on Cherry Red and Small Wonder, worked closely with Adrian Sherwood, and were part of that early 80s underground where anything seemed possible, but very little was saleable. Daniel Dax would later carve out a more respectable solo career, but the Lemon Kittens themselves were simply too chaotic, too angular, and too unpredictable to break through. They weren't trying to be difficult, they just couldn't help it. By the way, Carl is a Facebook friend of mine to this very day. Now let's turn the temperature up, if you'll pardon the near pun.
I'm sorry, was that another joke?
This heat first came together in 1976, formed by Charles Hayward and Charles Bullen. At the time, Hayward was also a member of the progressive rock band Quiet Sun, fronted by Phil Manzanera of Roxy Music. That background matters because this heat were not naive outsiders, they were technically skilled musicians who deliberately chose to dismantle rock music and rebuild it from scratch. They operated largely from a disused cold storage room in South London, which they converted into their own studio. Tape loops, found sounds, fractured rhythms, political dread, and studio manipulation became as important as guitars or drums. Their self-titled debut album, This Heat, appeared in 1979, followed by Deceit in 1981, a record that still sounds unsettling, confrontational, and completely out of time today. Too abstract for rock, too aggressive for art rock, too difficult for almost anyone looking for comfort or familiarity. This heat certainly weren't trying to be popular, but they were absolutely too strange and too intense and too uncompromising to ever be famous. At this point, you probably guessed it, I'm going to ask if you are subscribed to this channel. Well, are you? If not, I suggest you rectify that omission immediately. Like this video if you do like it, share it, and comment. I'd really like to know what you think. That being said, let's get back to the crazy musicians who thought they could circumnavigate the system. Now for the anchor band, the one most people are likely to have heard of. Ubu formed in Cleveland, Ohio in 1975 and took their name from a character in Alfred Jarry's absurdist play Uber Roy. Trust me, that's the kind of information other YouTube channels will never give you. Led by the late, great David Thomas, Pierre Ubu fused punk energy with avant-garde composition, musical concrete, industrial noise, and sheer bloody-mindedness. They were critically respected, endlessly influential, and almost impossible to categorize. Their debut album, The Modern Dance from 1978, is now considered a classic, but at the time, it sounded like nothing else on earth. Too arty for punk, too aggressive for art rock, too weird for just about everyone. Robert Kreisgau, if that's how you pronounce it, wrote in the Village Voice, "If I wanted to listen to random noise, I would listen to my butt cheeks." How rude. But water off a duck's back to Pierre Ubu. Still with it today, but fame and mainstream acceptance were never really on the cards.
Sir, I can assure you that those phrases were not on the cards when I gave them to him.
Back to Britain. And back to confrontation. Flocks of Pink Indians formed in Bishop Stortford in 1980, emerging from the anarcho-punk scene, but pushing it further socially and politically. Their early records were raw and aggressive, but by the time of Strive to Survive, causing the least suffering possible in 1982, they were experimenting with structure, texture and mood in ways that unsettled even their own audience. I put them on regularly when I was booking bands at the White Lion in Putney in the early 1980s, and always got on very well with them. Especially bassist Derek Burkitt, who was my contact, and who went on to set up One Little Indian Records, signing the likes of the Shaman, Chumbawamba, Björk and Alabama 3. Flocks were associated with Crass and initially recorded for their label, but musically they were more challenging, more abrasive and far less slogan-friendly. Too intense for the mainstream punk, too political for casual listeners, too honest to soften the edges. Flux didn't just make people uncomfortable, they made them think, and that rarely sells records, let me tell you. Nevertheless, Derek found ways around that later in his career.
Success is thrilling, isn't it?
And finally, someone who proved that being weird didn't always mean being humorless.
Is this your first time in Blackpool?
No.
How many times have you been?
What?
Do you come every week? Every year?
No, not every year.
Have you been on the big one yet?
No.
Have you had an ice cream or a candy floss?
No.
Well, that's it. That's how to enjoy yourself in Blackpool.
Frank Sidebottom was the creation of former Freshies frontman Chris Seavey, first appearing in the early 1980s, complete with an oversized papier-mâché head and an obsession with timpani, Casio keyboards and northern pop culture. But here's the thing, behind the mask was a brilliant songwriter, a sharp satirist and a genuine music obsessive. A man with more ideas and patience to see them through. Frank released records on Rough Trade, appeared on Top of the Pops, recorded Peel sessions and built a devoted following. But the character confused people. Too funny to be serious, too quirky to be just a novelty act. Frank Sidebottom was weird in a way that was deeply human, deeply British and utterly unique. The Cricketers was his London home from the very beginning, and I've made a longer video about my experiences with Chris, Frank, Denise and Little Frank. Search for it on YouTube. And while he achieved cult success, proper media stardom was always just out of reach for poor Chris. And to be honest, Chris Seavey was often Frank Sidebottom's worst enemy and vice versa. Is that very deep? Not really, is it? No.
And when I heard it, I just couldn't believe it was at the DJ.
And there we are. 5 acts who didn't fail, they simply didn't fit in. Too strange, too intense, too uncompromising, just too weird to be famous. I'm Jim Driver, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit like, click on subscribe and let me know in the comments which band or solo artiste you think was too weird for their own good. Thanks for watching and goodbye. See you next time.